Hey, fourth grade. It's Mr. Remedies. It's your boy, Mr. Remedies, back with today's mini lesson in reading language arts. Today, we are rounding the corner on our study of historical fiction. We are today talking about one of the more unique aspects of historical fiction. Today, we are noticing how writers of historical fiction use the language of that time in their dialogue. And as always, we have some success criteria that couple with a learning goal to set us off in the right path. Let's debut a new sweet transition and see what those are. Ooh, look at that. All right, today our learning goal is there on your screen. We are learning to connect the author's use of dialogue to the authenticity of historical fiction text. Okay, some success criteria that you can help use to guide you towards your goal is I can identify the setting of a story, I can define dialogue, pretty important, and I can identify unique language within historical text. I think if you can do those with some regularity, you've met your goal. All right. And so let's go over just a quick little refresher on vocabulary before we move over to some examples. And let's see what kind of sweet transition we have now. Ooh. All right, guys. Remember, the setting of a story is the place and time. Keyword there, time. A story takes place. Okay. And again, time is really crucial to historical fiction text. Right. We need to be able to define know what the setting is. We also need to be able to define what dialogue is. Dialogue is the words the characters say to each other. Right? So I want you guys to start practicing asking yourself a question when we read these historical fiction text. I want you to add, what do you notice about the dialogue? What are the characters talking about? So on the screen we have the cover of The Buffalo Storm, and if you think back, there's a little bit of dialogue at the beginning of the story between the narrator and her grandmother. And there on the screen, you see an example of that. You see the words, "You'll see buffalo, child, too many to count. What a gift to hear the earth rumble as they run." Right? And so if I think, what do I notice about the dialogue? I see grandma and the narrator talking about buffalo and something there. So what do we notice here? I notice that calling a little girl child, that really doesn't happen today, you know. If someone called you child, you probably get pretty angry at them, right? But at the time this story takes place, perfectly acceptable, right? What else do we notice that might be kind of perking our ears up a little bit, making us think that this isn't really taking place in modern times? Can you put your finger on it? Maybe put a hoof on it or something? I don't know. Boom. Grandmas today wouldn't tell their children, watch out for buffalo. I've been alive quite a long time. My grandma and I have never talked about watching out for buffalo. Nope. And that's because buffalo herds aren't a serious problem in 2020. You know, we do have our share of concerns. Lord knows we got our share of concerns. However, stampeding buffalo are no longer something we should be watching out for. Okay, so this tells me that this story took place at a time when that was a major concern. Okay. Additionally, I know because of my background knowledge, because I read a previous book, that buffalo used to stampede and thunder through the countryside, but it was a long, long time ago. So I know that grandmas don't talk about that anymore, but they did when this story takes place. All right, let's look at another example. All right, so I want you to start to practice to ask yourself, is the dialogue modern? Do people still talk like that? Right? And so for this, we're going to go to The Glorious Flight. In that, you see an example of dialogue as they roll up the street. They hear far above the sky a strange sound. Clackety-clack, clackety-clack. Hark, says Papa Bluro. Do you notice, is the dialogue modern? Do people still talk like that? No, not really. Nobody says hark anymore. They might say, watch out. They might say, hey, look, or they might say, whoa, or something like that. But folks today aren't really using the word hark as a way to get people's attention. So I know because we don't say it right now, it's not modern, that this must have taken place back in the past, okay? And even as I get better and more familiar with the kinds of languages from different time periods, I can even start to pinpoint the time period that the story does take place because of the words they use. So let's go to a review. Oh, solid. As a review, authors of historical fiction should always pay attention to the time in which their stories take place. The setting and plot become more believable if the dialogue is accurate. And what the characters talk about and the words they use can tell us when the story takes place. Okay? All right, guys, I've been Mr. Remedies. This has been a very quick mini lesson on dialogue. Stay tuned for some independent practice, and we will see you next time.